Welcome back to another episode of the Piano Pod. I am your host, Yukimi Song. So today for my audience exclusively, I'm going to take you on a quick trip to New York City's famous Lincoln Center, and more specifically, the backstage of the David H. Koch Theater, home to one of the most renowned ballet companies in the world. So for this episode, I got to interview Dr. Alan Moverman, a piano soloist at New York City Ballet. For his 20-year career at the company, he has performed concerti and solo repertoire in prominent concert venues worldwide and worked closely with the most celebrated choreographers such as Alexei Ratmansky, Jerome Robbins, who was actually the choreographer of the original West Side Story, and Justin Peck, and more. Before getting started, I want to welcome everyone listening or watching the Piano Pod for the first time. I'm a classical pianist and educator from New York City, passionate about creating a thriving and meaningful community of the classical music industry through this podcast. Please visit yukimisongstudio.com to find out more about my work. In each episode of the Piano Pod, I interview a guest speaker who has been breaking exciting new ground in the industry. Before getting started, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Please rate the show and review it on your favorite podcasting platform because every rating review will help people find my show. So, here we go. Are you ready, dear friends? Please enjoy the show. You are listening to the Piano Pod, where we talk to the brightest minds in the industry about how they are bringing the piano into the 21st century. I am honored to welcome Dr. Alan Moverman, a piano soloist at New York City Ballet. Throughout his 28-year career as a soloist for the ballet company and with their chamber music group called Moves, he has performed concerti and solo repertoire in prominent concert venues worldwide. So, Alan, welcome to the Piano Pod, and thanks for being here today.
I really appreciate the opportunity. That's great.
I'm so excited to get to know the world of ballet today by talking to you, as I'm not familiar with what really goes into the production of ballet programs. And I enjoy listening to ballet music and attending shows. And to be honest, I did a few years of ballet lessons as a kid for 5 years or so. And my experience and knowledge of what it takes to put together a ballet program stops right there. So I can't wait for you to take us to the backstage of David H. Koch Theater, which is home to New York City Ballet, and to be exposed to the ballet world and hear what's like to work with the most celebrated dancers and choreographers and what it takes to be a solo pianist at one of the most celebrated ballet companies in the world. So, Alan, I want to start with this question. Oh, by the way, where are you tuning in from today?
Oh, this is the Koch Theater at Lincoln Center, and you can see there's a ballet bar behind me.
I know.
And then there's a piano next to me.
Oh, wonderful.
So
that's the piano you use for rehearsal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a very small rehearsal room. The ballet company is really lucky because we have rehearsal rooms in the Rose Building, which is where Juilliard is. Also, huge rehearsal rooms. When I do gigs with some modern companies on occasion, they'll come into the studios and they'll just be like, "I can't believe this."
Oh,
wow.
Wow.
It's like the most beautiful studios with also gorgeous light and huge 15 feet windows throughout the. It's really gorgeous But the dancers really deserve it because it's, as you know, it's an incredibly difficult career for them, and they've made it a long way to be here, and so we want them to have the best possible conditions to work in.
Well, thank you for showing me the room. It's gorgeous. It's such an excitement happens in that room. So that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
What is the job description of ballet pianist of this major ballet company? What are the responsibilities?
Well, we have a really large repertoire here. and a lot of it is quite complex. We have 30 active Stravinsky ballets in the repertoire.
Oh my goodness.
So obviously Stravinsky can be complicated, and we play them all, or virtually all of them, in rehearsals for the dancers on the piano. So I would say one of the primary job descriptions is to be able to realize piano reductions and hopefully imitate the orchestra sound. Also, you need to have or develop a kind of sophisticated sense of rhythm, because the dancers are very sensitive to the speed of music, and there are other parameters in music also. Well, just talking about the rhythmic parameter, they need a lot of steadiness, a kind of steadiness that is a kind of default position. And as we all know, as pianists, rhythm is one of the things we study. Rhythm is a living thing. It's flexible. It's rooted in dance, and it's rooted in our bodies. And but it's something we always need to work on. But it's something dancers need, a sense of predictability in the rhythm.
How are you going to be able to match the orchestra? Because, after the rehearsal with pianists like yourself, then they're moving into orchestra. So what's the transition like?
Well, that's one of the pedagogical problems with rehearsal with piano versus orchestra. And I think it's important for people who do this job to constantly listen as much as possible to the orchestra version of the piece they're playing, because in specific ways, like what instrument is prominent, but also in subtle ways, like the type of rhythm an orchestra plays. Like, I can give you a good example. It might be fun to play a little bit. So this is from one of Tchaikovsky's well-known pieces. It's called Serenade for Strings. So that piece I was practicing the other day, and I realized that, the way I play it, it sounds nice. It's like a Chopin nocturne almost. But orchestras have a broader kind of sound. So then I think a little more careful, not really careful, but play on the more subdivided way, like orchestras, have to line up vertically. So you can't do like as much. They would do, this kind of thing.
So instead of playing with fluidity, you want to be more metronomical.
Right.
I don't want to say that term,
Not
but
musical, but a kind of a more, it's kind of more classical rhythm in a way. And also, orchestra music is by definition has a public sound. So when you're dealing with a public sound, you're going to be dealing with things that are easier to understand, that everyone can understand in a nice way. So if you play this, it's very beautiful, but it's intimate. The public might want. You hear the difference? You know, it's very hard when you play ballet piano not to get caught up in, like they say, if I played it the first way, they might say, oh, that's beautiful, that's great. Or they might say, you know, it feels a little too fast. So it's important not to get caught up in the fact that I did something wrong. I just didn't do it in the best possible way for them at the moment. Because once you get into, it's very easy to get into self-criticism of your rhythm in ballet. So it's better to forthrightly play what you feel and then adjust than to always be like, what do they need? What do they need? What do they need? Another thing I was practicing, there's a beautiful... And the other morning I was listening to the orchestra version. I was like saying, well, maybe better. It's different.
So speaking of that, how about playing, like, you know, that those are orchestra reductions. So during rehearsals, you're playing orchestra reductions most of the time, such as, you know,
Most of the time in rehearsals, yeah.
Yeah, so that must be really challenging. I've done, you know, accompanying for, you
For a
know,
piece
violin concerto and everything, and
playing the entire score. Well, I left out a lot of notes, but it is a little different than accompanying a violinist or a singer, because you tend to pick and you've got the melody is generally being carried by another instrument. You have to play the melody, and you have to indicate as much of the sense of the orchestration as possible.
wow.
Which is wonderful if you accompany people too, but doesn't always happen and isn't even always desirable, partly because it almost requires you to play the piece as if you're a soloist.
Wow, you're right. But what's the secret to playing them well?
There are a lot of different ones, different elements. Listen a lot to orchestras. Try to think about what the emotional effect is of hearing an orchestra, which is very different than hearing a solo pianist. Although there's a lot of overlap, of course. Also, I learned, there are very few books on the subject, but there's a very good book on accompanying by Martin Katz, who was a famous vocal accompanist for Frederica von Stade, and lots of Marilyn Horn. I mean, he was a great, and I studied with him a little bit, and he wrote a book about accompaniment. I can't quite remember the name of the book, but he did have a chapter on playing orchestra reductions. I've never seen any other book. I think there's a Robert Spillman book also that has a chapter on playing orchestra reductions. He taught at Eastman for many years and was also a spectacular vocal accompanist. And I actually studied with him as well. But they both wrote good books. Probably Bob Spillman's book is out of print, unfortunately, and it was an amazing book. I wish I'll have to look on one of the websites and pay $300 to buy the out of print book,
Yeah,
which, to be honest with you, I almost would, because that's how good it was.
Wow. But do you come up with your own piano transcriptions as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can show you what I was just playing off. You know, for most of music history, there weren't recordings, so almost everything written up to about 1950 has a piano version, which is kind of fun to know if you like piano music, if you like orchestra music and you're a pianist, you can really find on online or IMSLIP, you can find almost any of your favorite Beethoven symphonies or Brahms symphonies in piano arrangements, or at least in four-hand arrangements. So that's where we get our reductions for the most part. If it's a contemporary piece, someone has to make one. And it could be another pianist, or we could hire it out to someone who does that thing. I've done some myself. I probably have played close to 100 ballets here. Most of them are about between 35 and 60 pages long.
My
And,
goodness.
and I could probably get through pretty well 50 ballets, just sit at the piano and play cover
Oh
to
my
cover.
goodness. So, what does your day as a solo pianist for a major ballet company look like? How does your day start? Like, are you with dancers at the piano all day long?
I rehearse generally between 3 hours and 5 hours a day. Usually it comes in about 4. I start usually at 11:30 or 12, and there's a schedule that comes out 2 days in advance. It says who is rehearsing what, who the pianist is, who the rehearsal director is, and also all the dancers that have to be in the rehearsal. The schedule, and it shows one of 6 or 7 studios, or not, I think 5 or 6 studios that we can rehearse in. So different pieces. Today I have to rehearse a piece called Camera Music by Hindemith, which is a piano concerto. It's from 12 to 12:30. Then I have to rehearse this piece, which is Serenade, the piece I was just playing, Serenade for Strings, from 1 to 2:30. And that rehearsal is actually with the corps, because in ballet we have different categories of dancers. As you see on stage, there's a soloist, a principal dancer often. So you've got the core generally is more the background, for want of a better word. And then you've got the people that are kind of leading the troupe. Those are more principals. So they don't always rehearse together. At 1 o'clock for Serenade, it will be a core rehearsal. So even though it has principal dancers in it, I'll just be rehearsing with the core for an hour and a half, and they'll be going through it. It's a lot of responsibility because we're going to Madrid next week, and this piece hasn't been touched by anyone for, I don't know, 4 months. And so there's going to be 2 of these rehearsals, and then tomorrow I'm playing what we call a complete, where the entire company will be there, the conductor will be there, the directors, Wendy Whalen and Jonathan Stafford, will be there, and all the dancers in the ballet, and we'll play the ballet from beginning to end, which is the hardest thing we do.
Wow.
Playing with a conductor also is different than playing by yourself.
Yeah.
That's kind of a bit of an art form unto itself.
What are the advantage, not to mention having a full-time paid job as a pianist, which is sort of rare, right? Because pianists don't usually, unless if you're teaching, you don't get to have that luxury. Now, what are the advantages of being part of this company, and maybe you have more performance opportunities?
Well, yeah, in terms of, it is a reliable job at different kind of levels of the job. I mean, just as with any part of the music business, there are different places you find yourself in. You can be a pianist who plays for ballet class. Around New York, there are probably 100 ballet classes every day in New York.
I've done that before, yes.
They need pianists. Oh, so you know about that. I also play class. I know how to do that. Then you can play with the company. And that's also, that's maybe you'll be paid more money, and you'll have more regular work. And then you can play, hopefully, if you like doing that sort of thing, you can play with a major company, and then you get a more full-time kind of job that resembles a regular job.
Right.
With
Yeah.
benefits benefits and insurance and
But yeah, sure. But more, I understand that part of, full-time job, but more to do with more than that. What are the opportunities as a pianist that comes
Well,
with
here,
this?
I mean, we because we have such a large repertoire and because the music we work with is so complicated, we can do any of the range of music at all. I mean, we have we do the Prokofiev Fifth Concerto. We do the two Shostakovich concertos, all three Tchaikovsky concertos, Beethoven First. We do Ligeti Etudes. We do, we have at least 3 hours of Chopin music that we perform on stage. We do the Ravel Sonatine. We do Miroir. We do.
Wow. So you get to really perform,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
not just the rehearsal. Then
Oh,
you,
no. No, we play plenty of stuff on stage with the dancers.
wow. And then dancers are being, of course, choreographed
Yeah,
with that music.
yeah.
That is really fascinating. I never knew that part of your job
Oh, yeah,
description.
yeah. It's the great part of, well, all these other parts are also great parts.
Uh-huh.
But we do get opportunities to play big pieces that all pianists enjoy playing. And we play with a very fine orchestra and very fine conductors. It's kind of an unbelievable privilege.
It is. Wow. That is fascinating.
I
Yeah.
played the last really big piece I played was in the spring last year. I played a piece called Piano Pieces by Jerry Robbins, and it's a 40-minute piece of solo Tchaikovsky piano music, ranging from children's pieces that are, of course, always a little more difficult than people think, um, uh, to very hard virtuoso pieces that are recorded by, you know, well, everything's recorded now, but virtuoso piano pieces, and that was really great. And generally we play on the apron, they call it, which is on the side of the stage. The pianist comes out and takes a bow for the audience. That's how the piece always starts, and then the lights kind of go down, and then they open the curtain, and then you play. And that piece has, I think, 13 pieces in it. I try to make a little story. It helps me, and it makes it more fun. Every music piece or choreography piece, generally there's some sort of structure, some sort of subtext or story, and that helps you kind of organize all these pieces and have fun telling the story that you think should be told with this music, and it also helps you get the tempos. That's really, really important because, like I was saying about the serenade, you have to be able to get kind of specific. You can't just go. It's not all about you. I mean, if you're, I don't know, Polini, you can sit and you can play. You can play whatever you want, but maybe the choreographer, maybe the story of this dance is a little more neutral. Even though it's Chopin, you might play. You might play something a little more broad, so you can make a picture. So the listener can make a picture. Instead of being involved with your emotion, maybe you want the listener to be able to dream. So that's the kind of thing. But if you it is a kind of intimate communication with the dancer, and so that changes the tempo. You might play. Which is poco rubato. So, poco rubato is something you can remember. Or you might do the broad moonlit thing that, the picture. Which you might write semplice. Those are different tempos. The intimate one is slower and more in eighths, and as I found in the second measure, as I was thinking about it, the moonlit one is more in two, and has a slight larger rhythm that moves, and every possible variation. And these are the things we think about. We're privileged as pianists to play complete pieces. We're the only musicians that play so many complete pieces. Violinists only play half the music, and so we have a lot of fun, but we have a lot of responsibility to make decisions about characterization, and dance forces you to.
Wow.
It must. It's not just anything you feel.
Wow.
It is important to realize that all the things you feel have validity, but you have to eventually decide, what is it? Is it agitated, or is it defiant? What is it? And it's fine if you're playing by yourself. It's not even fine, really, because you really have to have this. I feel strongly you have to have this language of emotion in your mind.
This episode is presented in collaboration with our good friends at Forte, a free alternative to Zoom, purpose-built for music teachers. Forte offers features optimized for classical music lessons, including audio quality far superior to existing platforms and allowing you to hear every nuance of your student's instrument. Their colleagues at the Royal College of Music, Aspen Music Festival, Curtis Institute, and Berklee College of Music have even used Forte in their own programs. Forte's mission is to radically expand access to high-quality music education worldwide. Forte always puts teachers and students first. This means you can use Forte with your own students for free forever, and Forte will soon introduce paid features allowing you to connect with new students around the world. Sign up for free today at fortelessons.com or click the link in the description.
My teachers were, I had wonderful teachers. I had Richard Good for many years, and also the son of Schnabel I studied with, Karl Ulrich Schnabel, and he taught me. He said, to begin a piece, you should find, you should play it in many different characters, like every character you can think of, so you can get this language that you connects the head and the heart, or the body, and it's very useful in dance. Because then you can remember a tempo in more than just an abstract, an intellectual way. Although dance pianists do get a good sense of metronomic exactness, like 63 is different than 66. I don't want to test myself and embarrass myself, but one thing that helps sometimes is some pieces you just sort of know the tempo, and so like I know I could be wrong, but this little Scott Joplin waltz. I believe it's 96, but 1, 2, 3. Actually, I think that was too fast. So you remember that. So maybe I have to play some other piece that I decide is 96. You remember a piece you know the tempo of, oh, that was 72. So,
You, yeah, develop this
well,
metronome in your body. I'm
yeah.
sure that especially with, playing with dancers forces you to be more aware of those things, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's fun. You have to look at it as fun. If you look at it as terrible and, how dare you play, my, sonata, at 50 when I wrote 54. I mean, you're not going to do too well. I mean, and then I think it's interesting. The two approaches to tempo in the studio. You can play the tempo that you think the orchestra will play all the time. That's one approach. That's a good approach for some people. Also, you can look at the dancer and the situation. Where are they in their preparation? Are they remembering the piece that they've played a long time ago? Are they amazing dancers? And if you don't give them something to chew on, meaning a really healthy tempo, they're going to fall asleep. They're going to not. It's too uninteresting for them. You have to get into the personalities of
Interesting.
working with,
Right.
like, and that doesn't even just involve rhythm. It can involve sound also. Say I'm working with Tyler Peck, who's a complete virtuoso. She probably has the greatest ballet technique of our time. So, and she's done serenade a million times. So, and say we're doing like a rehearsal right before, she's totally on it. She knows it. If I play like, for her, which is serenade for strings, that's more of a tempo you would play when a dancer is trying to remember something. They're in the room, and you don't want to impose too much. You want to remind them, remember this, you knew this last year. So they have space. Da, 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 da. So you knew this last year, so just remember, jog your memory a little bit. Then you might have a dancer who's very tall. So they need the characterization, but they also need maybe a slower tempo. That's a bigger body. And so all these things, also, these are words like characterizations of a Beethoven sonata. Is it aggressive? Is it stately? Is it what's the difference? I mean, there was a big long Schnabel article in the beginning of Opus 111. What's the difference between maestoso and larghetto? There is a difference. And it doesn't mean you're locked in, to this terrible, odious pedanticism, but you want to project some specific. In order for an audience an audience to read your music, or for a dancer to read your tempo, it has to be specific.
Wow. Now, all these things are very fascinating, but what attracted you to start this career, and especially as a full-time soloist at a ballet company? Did you start as like an internship or apprenticeship?
No, not really. They kind of throw it all at you at once. And it's sort of a little sink or swim. They're kinder now. But when I came in, I think I had to play Suite 3 by Tchaikovsky, which is a big orchestra piece, complete, on stage with the conductor, the entire company, and within a couple weeks. And then I played the second act of Midsummer Night's Dream, which is about 40 minutes long, on stage with the whole company. And that's the way it used to be. It used to be really challenging, to say the least.
And you went Juilliard for masters, right? And then for
Yeah,
doctorate, you went to
Stony
Stony Brook, the great
Yeah.
schools. Now, did they prepare you to be the ballet pianist?
No, not really. I mean, I think that one of the main things that helps me is that I started as a jazz pianist.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so, and I was very good. I studied with very famous jazz teachers, and I was New York State in high school, first, I don't know what they call it, all-state pianist, jazz pianist, 2 years in a row. New York State, which is a lot of jazz pianists are in New York. My sense of music is very, in a sense, it's kind of conceptual. Like the piano is just a part of what I do.
Yeah.
It's just the expression of what I do. But I just play music, and when I see music, because I was a jazz pianist, I just see harmony, and so when you're playing reductions, there's a kind of quick analysis of what's going on in the music. I mean, this is not only true of jazz pianists by any means, but it helped me, to be less orthodox. Like, I'm not like, what finger am I going to put on the note? I'm like, okay, this is serenade, so it's slow, it's 6/8, it's A minor, it's moving to the dominant, like these little almost like cue cards, what you know in the music. Now it's changing tempo. Now this phrase is 8 measures. This phrase is 6 measures. Also, I studied composition with Howard Boatwright, who's a wonderful composer and a pupil of Hindemith. So I had really good composition training, and really, I mean, my musical life. I mean, the main thing I do is play the piano, but I mean, it's like all day. It's
Right.
listening, thinking about structures, thinking about reading about music history, and
Yeah, wow. But that's very different from traditional way of learning piano because you have this background of jazz and also the training of composition, so you see music differently. So
I think so. Yeah.
yeah, then obviously playing for dancers also give you a different perspectives about playing piano, right? Yeah.
Right, and also well, you mean playing itself?
For example, compared to, I've done ton of work collaboration with singers and instrumentalists.
Right.
So as opposed to that, playing for dancers.
Right. Well, you have to give them the structure more, because they're going to be dancing to people. Actually, for one thing, they're going to be dancing to people that can't really see them while they're playing. So obviously, they're dancing to the music. So you can't follow them in the same way that you follow a singer. I want to say that with a caveat. You can follow them also. But as a rule, you have to keep in mind that they need structure. You can't see them. So so you can't really connect in
Right.
that way. So that's why what you do has to be involved with them but defined. Kind of very definite, like this is what it is. So they know where the music is.
Right. Yeah.
They need to know where the music is. That's, in a way, your primary responsibility is a structural responsibility. Now, when you're playing for singers, I studied with Gil Kalish also, who was a great vocal accompanist. And he always said the pianist provides the structure in that too. So my career is not a vocal accompanist. Maybe you do more than I do. I used to do a lot when I was in school, but when I was accompanying voice, a lot of it was in the studio, and a lot of it was about a kind of following or connecting, which is what made it so enjoyable. But I have to say that, Gil, who was a great vocal accompanist, always talked about providing the structure.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think it's more so for dancers. I guess they have to really keep the beat, right?
They keep a beat and they need to know where they are in the
In the
piece.
piece, yes. And it's impossible to sort of feeling each other, although you may, but because they're on a different, you can't see
It
them all
has
the.
to happen after. I mean, and it's when you play a solo piano piece, like the Robbins piece I talked about, the Tchaikovsky, or Dances at a Gathering is an hour-long Chopin piece by Robbins, with hard pieces like the B minor scherzo and all sorts of crazy stuff. When you play those things, you can connect more. But still, there's something that's agreed upon prior, really.
Right. That's why there's you spend so much time on rehearsals and
You spend time in rehearsals, like, the things I was showing before, different ways. And then once that way is established, you can connect. That's the wonderful thing. But until that is established, and I suppose there are some dancers that are just, spontaneous, and maybe you just throw the book out the window and just connect, and that's great if you can see them. If
yeah.
you can see them, but
Hey, TPP friends and listeners. The Piano Pod is in its third season. Thanks to all of you for watching or listening to every episode since its launch in 2020. I started this show with a simple question I had in mind for quite some time, which is how can we as classical pianists and music educators present the beautiful classical music tradition to the 21st century audience in a fun and contemporary and stylish and engaging way. It's been an incredible journey for the last 3 years, and I love what I do through this podcast, providing a platform for pianists and educators to reflect and discuss freely how we can keep the classical music industry thriving and relevant in this rapidly changing world. Now more than ever, I really need your help. I need your support so that I can continue my work by bringing you highly valuable content bi-weekly by interviewing groundbreakers in the industry. You can make a one-time donation or monthly pledge by clicking the PayPal link in the show notes or going to the Piano Pod's website at thepianopod.com. As a thank you, you will receive the Piano Pod's fun logo sticker in the mail. So please support my show today and don't forget to subscribe and continue listening and tell your friends and colleagues about the Piano Pod. Let's continue with the episode.
and I just love dance because dance is another way that music can reach people, because some people are more visual. Like they say there are 7 types of learning, right? Some people are more, they learn with their eyes, and if it's friendlier for them to hear a piece of music with choreography, it helps their imagination. They connect with the seeing someone move makes you feel your own body. Seeing a stage set stimulates your imagination. You were talking about reaching people before we started the conversation, and one of the things that I feel really strongly about, you were asking, what is the relevance of music in society and stuff. Music and all art, it's a much more, in a way, it's a more specific language than the words we use, because it combines ideas and emotions in a way that's much more sophisticated than we're able to. I mean, maybe if you're Shakespeare or something, you can communicate those ideas in words. But people, people in the world has problems, people have problems, but they go to see a dance performance, and it puts them back in themselves, that in a way that's tremendously healthy, even practical. We really need that in the world, and art, people, say, oh, you shouldn't be an artist because, how are you going to make money and stuff, but it would be a terrible world, just terrible, if no one tried to do it.
Yeah.
It is very, very hard, but it would be terrible. We
Without
would have more wars, and we would have more probably more diseases, maybe even, because the scientists wouldn't be as good because they would be unhappy people. Art is
Absolutely.
just a wonderful, it's like the best medicine. Our old boss, Gordon, who was probably one of the great ballet pianists in history, Gordon Belzner, was Balanchine's kind of right-hand man. He was the man at the piano when Balanchine choreographed all the masterpieces, Nutcracker, and well, not Nutcracker, but he was a little after that time. But all these Stravinsky, it was Gordon, Stravinsky, and Balanchine sitting in the room.
What makes these people, the great ballet pianists and
Okay.
soloists?
Well, the music we do is really hard. So you kind of have to be a concert level pianist
Of course, yeah.
to play here, more or less. I mean, that doesn't mean you're Andras Schiff, but you have to, have gone pretty far, played big recitals, and so Gordon was a wonderful pianist. That was the start. He was a supremely gifted, beautiful sound, warm, approachable, fantastic technique, immaculate kind of musical thinking. He was a student of Michelangelo, and also, but in a way, something that is maybe a little like me in a certain way, he was a composition student of John Cage.
Wow.
So he had like this kind of funky, creative, cool aspect to him that opened him up. He would talk about David Lynch movies and he had all these interests that were so interesting, and so he was an amazing pianist, but he was also like a wide-ranging person, and he never would have been satisfied, I don't think, with just struggling with fine-tuning his Beethoven sonata. I don't think that was his. He wanted to be more with people, I think, and that I think you have to be maybe not so single-minded about piano, but you have to start to play here. You have to start with being basically concert-level pianist. I mean, one of our pianists now, Steve Gosling, he's probably one of the 10 greatest performers of contemporary music in the world. He's incredible. I mean, he's has like 30 records, and he's played all this impossible music.
Wow.
Adis and crazy stuff. Stockhausen, all the stuff, and and we've had really Susan Walters, that was one of our pianists. She's a fantastic pianist. Elaine Shelton, so anyway, you have to be a good pianist, but then you have to have you have to be a good musician. And if you have to choose between the two, it's probably better to be a little bit, if you can even divide these things, which is hard, a little better musician than you are a pianist.
Wow. Yeah.
You have to care more about the music than you care about, being Mr. Perfect, which is kind of a relief in a certain way. If you think about it, music is fun.
It sounds like also being musician means it requires more flexibility, versatility, It's not just about what's on the score, but you also have to read the room, what's going on the,
Exactly. Read the room is a really good skill. Read the room is saying a lot. I was thinking about that yesterday in my rehearsal. I was, because I was playing Serenade, and I was thinking, oh, well, the ballet rehearsal director said, oh, it's too fast. They're just remembering it. But it's hard because I was at this part in the music which I have trouble playing. And so I was like, is it me or is it which happens every day.
Wow.
And then so at that point you have to make a decision. You have to decide, am I going to slow down my tempo, or or if I'm going to slow tempo, you also have to a little bit ask yourself, was I actually wrong, or were they wrong? It's important to keep your center. You know, like you can change for them, but still think they were wrong. It wasn't too fast. Maybe it wasn't too fast. Maybe the dancer, because sometimes they get behind. You know, they're doing fine for a while, and then they have trouble with the step, and they're like, "Oh, it's too fast." So what are you then? If she's like, "Oh, maybe I rush," you know, and they can say you're rushing when sometimes you're not rushing, you know. Sometimes you are.
Right. Yeah. Pianists, we all tend to rush. Yes.
Yeah.
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 That's
I
now, in your bio, you were saying that you worked with the most celebrated choreographers, such as Alexei Ratmansky, Jerome Robbins, Justin Peck, and all the wonderful, wonderful choreographers. So, even I've heard of Jerome Robbins, the name, and also he did the choreograph for West Side Story. So you worked
Yeah.
with him. Can you tell us how was it like to work with this amazing choreographer?
Well, I mean, all right, I have to say, I worked with him at the very end of his life. And I don't think I really experienced the full Jerry Robbins. He was famously hard to work with and critical, unbelievably critical, apparently. It was a different time. It was an old school. I'm sure things that were done in those days would not have been done the same way now. But by the time I worked with him, he just left me alone because I don't think he had enough energy to bother with me. And I was the pianist or one of the two pianists for choreographing his last ballet, which was Brandenburg. And I also worked with him on a couple other pieces, but that was my main experience as to movements from several Brandenburg concertos and a couple other pieces I think that aren't in Brandenburg concertos. And so I don't have any of the great stories. You can read the biography and tell the great stories, but he was famously difficult. But the only funny thing I remember two really funny things about him. One was that to give you an idea of how I stacked up in his hierarchy of people in his life, even though I spent probably 30 hours with the guy. He'd just say, "Hey, you play."
Wow.
And so I'd play, and apparently he thought I was okay. He told the people on the fourth floor, "Oh, he's okay." I had only just started. I think I had only played for 4 months. Then I rehearsed another couple things, suite of dances. I played which is actually a Bach cello suite, but we rehearsed it on piano, and then we brought in Wendy Sutter to play it. At that time, it was Wendy. Now it's Ann Kim a lot. So that was funny. But I remember I had one moment with him where he was sitting at the piano next to me on the stage of the theater here. We're at the Koch Theater here. And he was just playing some notes, and he just started reminiscing how he used to play the piano. And it was kind of sweet. He was in his mid-70s then, and I don't think he quite made 80. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But he was a stressful guy, but obviously a genius. He had a special, I think I should say, for the people who aren't ballet fans, but might be interested in going and checking out, he created a special kind of intimacy on stage between the piano and the dancers in his piano ballets. In particular, the Chopin, also this Tchaikovsky piece. it's really hard to define, but you kind of have to see it. But it was like this kind of very almost quiet theatrical space that you'd feel between the solo pianist and the dancers. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I know this for a fact, that one of his inspirations was the ballet studio itself.
Wow.
So the connection, I'm sure you felt playing for dance classes at some point. Anyone who's played knows that there can be a special quality in the room. And he was able to do something like that with these Chopin pieces. What was interesting is they often had no set. They were often just dancers on stage and piano, kind of pared down, you know. You know, and had a particular quality.
Wow.
And even in the fast pieces, like, I forget it. But you know, just it was very special. It was very, very special. Totally different than Balanchine. All choreographers have a different relationship with music. Some people illustrate the music, more like lead the audience to understand the music. Some composers respond to the music with their own, okay, here's the music, how do I feel about this, this thing I'm confronting? Like, so they could have beautiful music and they could even express something angry sometimes. Maybe they're like, well, I didn't get any of that.
Let's talk about New York City Ballet. How exciting is that this ballet company is? And you've been working for them for 20 years, 28 years.
28, I think, yeah.
And what's so special about this ballet company?
Well, it's just got a lot of great dancers. You know, I mean, you know, it's the top, or one of the very tops, and they're just wonderful. And that's the main thing. And then we've had the best choreographers here. I mean, there are other great choreographers, but we've had probably the main ones. Robbins, Balanchine, complete genius. I mean, Balanchine, without Balanchine, a lot of those Stravinsky scores, in my view, don't even really work. I mean, that one of the most interesting things about Balanchine, there are a lot of interesting things, but there's some music that almost needs the dance. And not Rite of Spring and not really Petrushka, but you get Stravinsky post 1930, the dance helps. It helps you. Without the dance, there's something about it that, I mean, why do great orchestras not play all that music? Very rare to hear, even a performance of Symphony in Three Movements, it's an exciting piece, dramatic, hardly ever. We play it here. I play it on the piano. But when you see it with the dance, you know, it puts you right back into the, you know, you're there in World War II and the boats are floating around the Pacific and, you know, there's bombs flying and, you know.
Wow.
It just helps. But it's not, somehow Stravinsky sometimes is not enough. It's like there's something suggested that maybe is not fully realized. But still, it's great. It's great stuff. We do tons and tons. I can't tell you how many Stravinsky pieces.
Yeah. But how many programs or how many different programs do you have at New York City Ballet?
Well, I mean, you know, different seasons are different.
Right.
I mean, and you know, believe it or not, we used to do seasons regularly with 50 ballets, 50 full-length ballets a season.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it was insane. You know, and That also had to do with the fact that, the subscribers wanted to see the great Balanchine ballets. They were just hungry to see them. And some of them, honestly, were sometimes like kind of thrown on. Our dancers are really fast. We can I've taught people, I've sat in the piano room in like Tivoli Concert Hall in Denmark, someone gets injured, a principal dancer, Joaquin learned Jeu de Cartes by Stravinsky, one of the most complicated Stravinsky scores. He learned this principal role in 5 hours and went and performed it that night, and we just hacked away at it all afternoon. And, he did it. It was great. And that happens not infrequently. Too much repertoire, but tons and tons and tons of great stuff. I mean, you should see the music cabinet in the music room. I should bring you into the music room and just start taking out the scores. What's there would just, there's Webern scores, there's scores by all these great living composers. There's 10 Philip Glass scores. There's I just can't even tell you. There's, John Adams was here for a while. We play I think we play 5 John Adams scores. I play often Hallelujah Junction for 2 pianos. Which you should play it if you like that sort of thing. It's really one of his best pieces. It's really fantastic fun and beautiful. We do Fearful Symmetries. We do Harmonie Lière, huge pieces. And, for example, we play Fearful Symmetries. We play it on the piano in the rehearsals.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't played it in 15 years, but I play the whole, 30 minutes of, John Adams, but it gets really hard.
Wow, but so many different repertoire that you are using in the ballet.
It's fun. It's fun. If you're that kind of musician, you should definitely work here. You should definitely and if you're someone who just likes music and has a lot of facility at the piano and they need you. Because we have these days, people get really piano is so hard, and people really get into their box,
right.
and I know that the new generations are expanding a lot. Even a lot of classical musicians improvise a little bit now.
Oh yeah, Mm-hmm.
Which has changed. It used to be when I was in Juilliard, it was like holy cow, it's unbelievable,
Yeah.
You just, every practice room,
Right.
people are trying to get those fingers moving and, it's good. If that's what you want to do, great.
Right. But I think, we need to talk about how we're going to bring this industry forward, right? So then, especially this post-pandemic era, and then you mentioned as pianists, we tend to be in the room practicing all the time and not communicating with others, not collaborating with others, but that sort of culture has to change. I know we have to practice on our own, but your job, your career is all about working with others, working with people, in the people. Yeah. And that's something that I want to encourage new generations to experience and, not just get stuck in the practice room all day, but experience the life. And that's how you experience music too.
I completely agree.
So let's talk about your career and life outside of New York City Ballet. So you have this ongoing project with a painter. Uh,
Right.
Her name is Karen
Kaapcke.
Kaapcke. Okay.
Years ago, I decided that to focus my energies outside the ballet, my energies that had to do with me as a recitalist, I decided to focus it on late works, pieces that composers wrote toward the end of their lives. And I was inspired by a book called Late Style by Edward Said, who's a philosopher, was a philosopher at Columbia, and it was very famous as in that field. And he was also a friend of Daniel Barenboim.
Oh.
He was very involved with Israeli-Palestinian issues. In fact, that was, I think, the basis of how they got together, because Daniel Barenboim was Israeli and Said was Palestinian. And I think that he may have had to do with the founding of this East-West orchestra that exists, where they have Palestinians and Israelis play together. They've done shows around the world. Anyway, he's very interesting, and he wrote about late Beethoven and late Strauss and late Mozart. So my project is to learn and perform the last 3 Beethoven sonatas, the last 3 Schubert sonatas, and the Prokofiev War sonatas, but I don't like the 6th sonata that much.
Oh, no.
So I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
And I don't think I'm going to do it. And so I substitute the Copland Piano Fantasy, which is a very late Copland work. It always meant a lot to me. So based on those pieces and surrounding them with lots of other pieces, late Ligeti etudes, Arvo Pärt, late Arvo Pärt pieces, Philip Glass etudes are fairly late. I play those. So that's the music part of the project. And then Karen created paintings as a result of our conversations about the music. And we've done 3 of these recitals / art exhibitions. You can see, when you hear me playing the Copland Fantasy, you can see there are people sitting on the right and left of me, and there are paintings behind them. And then in back of the piano is a projection of the painting that is the Copland Piano Fantasy painting. But the other paintings actually were from other parts of the recital and had been projected onto the wall, onto the screen. When I played the other pieces, I played a Bach piece, and I played Opus 111, and even a Bill Evans transcription of jazz, jazz solo, and she painted that as well. So that's a perfect example of what we did. And then, so we did that in different places. 3 recitals. They're very complicated to put together, especially as most musicians know, when you do these things. My job is at New York City Ballet. It's very satisfying, but when I do these other things, there's no management, there's no stage manager to greet me. Everything is, there's no one to make my programs.
Right.
You have to embrace it if you want to do those things, and I have. I get inspired by, maybe this is too heady, but there was a great visual artist, conceptual artist named Christo. He died recently. Maybe you know him. He made environmental art. I think they called it that, something like that. It's kind of a silly name, but he would, years ago, he made something called the Gates in Central Park. I think maybe before you were born, but I mean, my daughter was like 2 when he did it, and what he did is all the paths of Central Park. There were like these kind of curtains that fell over the path and on these little metal constructions, and they were orange. And it was very beautiful, and it was through the whole park. And he did this all over the place. He did it in the mountains of California. He did it in Japan, different things, not just Kurt. And he was really great. And he said that the thing that interested him was how he had to work through the bureaucracy to get the permits. And it wasn't just the art, it was about the process of producing the art. So I like to think when I get depressed that I have to call too many people on the phone, when I do my own projects, I like to think idealistically that you're really in the world. You're finding out how things work. You know, you're relating to people, you're talking to secretaries, you're talking to, you know, heads of opera America. You know, you've got to be personable, you've got to be, you know, you want to work together with them and enter these other worlds that are a little more cut and dry.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a challenge, but it's an interesting challenge. And, you know, ultimately, if we can't operate in the world, you know, no matter how high our ideals, it's very important to be able to operate in the world in a way that's consistent with your values, not sell out, but as an act of connection and even being generous to yourself. You want to feel that you're connected and you have a meaningful way of interacting with colleagues, with your bosses. All these things are, I mean, really important. And I do think that, and maybe I get this a little bit from Gil Kalish, because Gil Kalish was, you know, was like super mensch, you know, like super great guy, you know, like, you know, he was a musician, but he was, you know, it was like, everyone said, oh, Gil, he's like a regular guy, you know, and, you know, like, but he was very, you could tell that he paid a lot of attention to people. And that was like the main thing he taught us, I think, was that, you know, it's not just about you and your piano playing, you know, it's about more than that, and your life, and that's a really important thing. No matter who you are, no matter where your gift placed you,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
you want to have a good life, and generally it makes it easier to communicate something so precious if you have, you know, if your environment is fulfilled in a way, full.
Absolutely. And then you're really living the beautiful life surrounded by people, and then the surrounded by beautiful art. And now, do you plan to do this project with the painter Karen soon?
I think we might be done with the paintings, actually.
Okay.
Now I'm looking for, maybe you know somebody, I'm looking for actors
Okay.
to recite poetry. And probably I'll bring it all together. But you know, this is one of my things, is what I was talking about dance, is that I think when there's another medium that's set against music, it helps the audience. You know, I'm very frustrated because I like some very esoteric music, like late Beethoven and stuff, but I want the audience to get it. I want them to enjoy it. I don't want them to think, oh, that sounds really complicated.
Right.
But, you know, and so when they have a painting, like, or like in the Copland or in the Beethoven, you know, they have this painting of what I think is a picture of a kind of feminist message, actually, of you know, a kind of disturbance, you know, helps. You know, it's somehow, you know, it helps the audience. They connect, you know, oh, this is disturbing. I'm
Absolutely.
not, it's not it's not beautiful. It's beautiful in its disturbingness.
Right.
And so you see a painting in other art forms, people understand that. But in music, sometimes they just want everything to be beautiful, and
Yeah, everything to be pretty, right?
pretty,
Yeah,
pretty.
pretty. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I
We
mean,
we, we want to stay away from prettiness. We
well, a little prettiness is okay. If not, like Foray has a lot of prettiness,
That's
or,
right.
but on a high level.
But sometimes we need grotesque in beauty, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Otherwise, nothing means anything.
Right.
Otherwise, there is no beauty,
Yeah.
really. And that's what's great about collaborating with other art forms. So you get it. I mean, it's just, and it's just such a damn relief too, because it's like you want to play these solo pieces, but you're not. Most of us are not famous pianists, who get to play them many, many times. You want to make it special for yourself, and you want to make it an event for your audience. And otherwise, it's not fun. It's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, absolutely.
and
Thank you for really sharing your wisdom. So, I want to promote New York City Ballet, and is there anything that you want to say about upcoming events or program?
well, we're having the spring season coming up. That starts in April, late April. The great thing about New York City Ballet now is we have gotten Alexei Ratmansky as our artist in residence. Alexei is, along with Justin Peck, who's really amazing. He actually did the new West Side Story movie. He was the choreographer. But Alexei is arguably the greatest choreographer of our time. And in my opinion, and in a lot of people think that, he is so great. He is just so great. And he also choreographs really great music to really like Shostakovich concertos and things. And we are just so fortunate to have him coming here. I mean, it's this is the company of Balanchine and Robbins, and Alexei is a really, and Justin too, but Justin's really amazing. But Alexei is, I mean, getting him is just a wonderful thing for everyone.
Okay.
The dancers in particular, they love working with great choreographers like Justin and Alexei. They just love it. It's like when you worked with your greatest piano teacher ever, like Leon Fleischer or whoever you played for, like that's the way they feel when they're in the studio with Alexei.
Wow.
So that's what you want them to have.
Yeah.
You want that for them.
Wow. So, for those who are listening and watching, please visit www.nycballet.com to learn more about New York City Ballet and their programs and their new season coming up in late April. So this has been really fun and inspiring conversation, Alan. And I unfortunately I have to let you go very soon because your rehearsal is coming up. But before I let you go, we have one more thing to do. It's called the Piano Pod Rapid Fire Questions. I didn't warn you, but this is part of the show where I get to ask fun questions to each guest. Now, here's a little warning. As silly as these questions may sound, your answers may reveal who you truly are. So,
that's
yes.
well, I'm pretty good at hiding that, so you'll.
Okay, good. So please answer them with the shortest responses as possible, and
That sounds really crazy.
no explanation needed. Okay.
Oh God.
All right. So question number 1: what is your comfort food?
The restaurant across the way from us. It's a kind of African influenced restaurant in the new renovated David Geffen Mall. Anything they have there is my comfort food.
Great. I need to try. I need to try that. Now, how do you like your coffee?
With half and half and no sugar.
Sounds great.
or in Starbucks, what do they say? A light splash
Light-
of half.
Cats or dogs?
Both.
What is your word or words to live by?
Freedom.
What is the most important quality you look for in other people?
understanding.
Name 3 people who inspire you, living or dead.
Abraham Lincoln, Schubert, Ratmansky.
Sounds good. Name 1 piece in your current playlist.
Horace Silver's Song for My Father. It's a jazz.
So last question. Fill in the blank. Music is blank.
Fulfillment.
Yay, ding, 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 you won. Thank you so much, Alan, for really joining here today.
Thank you, Yukimi. I really appreciate the opportunity to share these things with you. And I hope that, everyone will find a good path for themselves, either as professional musicians or transforming that dream into something beautiful.
Well said. So this concludes the episode of the Piano Pod. Thank you once again, Alan, for joining my show today and sharing your stories and insights and expertise. And you can find more information about New York City Ballet. Please visit nycballet.com. And thank you to my wonderful audience and fans for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review it on whatever podcasting platform you use. If you're watching us on YouTube, remember to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. You can also find my show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. The links are listed in the show notes. I will see you for the next episode of the Piano Pod. Bye everyone, and thank you, Alan.